unique. Iosefa, it's Joseph in English, but in Samoan, it's Iosefa.
My name is Julieta Kobos, and I am the owner of Dell Anno.
My name is Adeva Dobor. I'm a manager and vice president of a retail banking center for Comerica Bank.
I think it's best to sort of step back and look at how predatory lending, how to sort of grew out of the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009, and it was during that time where folks still needed capital but couldn't qualify for these traditional loans through banks, and that there was the impetus behind alternative lending. Yeah, I mean, there are some different characteristics of sort of predatory products. And, one is like a balloon payment, for instance, where on the surface, the APR looks great or it looks competitive, but what they're hiding is like a large balloon payment, which essentially, or certain fees, right? There's practices like stacking or flipping loans, right? Where you got into a loan that you really shouldn't be in, you can't afford it, and that same lender comes back to you and says, hey, we could refinance you. But when they refinance you, they're actually not putting you in a better position. They're charging more fees and just extending the turmoil that you and your business will be suffering from. And then there's the most popular vehicle are merchant cash advances, which in other words are MCAs. And that's a whole nother, it's an innovative way to get capital out to our small business owners. And for some folks, these types of loans work, and for others, they don't. The best way to describe a merchant cash advance is probably telling you what it's not first. And it's not a loan, which actually, because it's not a loan, it's sort of in this unregulated space. And so these MCAs are able to get away with things because there's really no oversight. Essentially, what they're doing is providing you an advance on your future sales. So the way that you would pay back a merchant cash advance, there's actually two ways. One is through each of your debit and credit card sales, right? A portion of those sales will go back to the merchant cash advance company. The other way is that they'll take a daily or weekly debit from your bank account through ACH. And in many ways, it's kind of like, you're on cruise control because you don't see that stuff. And sometimes that's okay, like with the loan, if you have automatic payment. So you're kind of on cruise control. But at least with that, you know exactly what you're paying every month. With these MCAs, it's so confusing to understand like what portion and percentages and the breakdown, because there's no APR. Right? At least with traditional loans, when you're shopping around, you can actually compare your terms and your rates based on APR. But because these aren't loans, it's hard to really figure that out. There has been some research done though to look at how it would compare to a traditional loan if you were to build in all the fees that go into the MCAs, and you see upwards of 100% APR if you were to look at MCAs that way. And obviously that's, I think anything above 35% we consider in the industry predatory. The fact that we as sort of practitioners in this industry cannot figure out exactly how much you're paying and how much that changes over time, it just tells you how much more difficult it is for a small business owner who's focused on getting their craft right, their service, their product, their customers, right? And so over the long term, one way to look at merchant cash advances, if you are, say, a seasonal business, right, where, the winter time is your slow period, summertime is your active period. Well, one of the upsides of merchant cash advance is that it only takes from what your sales patterns look like. So that could be good. However, one of the challenges with that is that it's hard to understand your cash flow because of all of those minute fees and percentages that they take from your sales. So, that there is a place for merchant cash advance if they're transparent, and it's for sort of seasonal businesses. So mission-oriented lenders, right, folks that have your success in mind, will write it out for you, define it exactly as it is. And that is, here's your rate, here's your term, these are the fees, this is what you'll owe every month. And it's clear, right? If you feel like they're not being clear about any of those things, APR, rates, terms, then that's a red flag, right? If they're not asking you questions about your ability to pay back, right? That's a sign, because there's what's called like asset-based lending, where they will, rather than look at your ability to pay back, they'll look at your assets as potential, liquidation of that, so that they can pay themselves back. So that's just if there are terms that don't make sense to you, or if they're not being responsive, those are sort of telltale signs. Again, bottom line is common sense. Even though you might be in a pinch to get this capital, I think you can still take the time to do some research.
Even though there's a need for quick and easy financing, at some point we have to think at what cost.
My husband and I have been in business for about 20 years in the cabinet industry. As a small business, you do what you need to do in order to keep the lights on. With predatory lending, it's very easy. And two, that the terms are changing constantly, that you speak to one person and they tell you something, and then you speak to another person and then the story changes.
Another idea is there's a movement called the Small Business Borrowers Bill of Rights. And I think if you go online, it's borrowersbillofrights.org, something like that. Anyways, on here, there's about 10 10 guiding principles, right, for responsible lenders, from like transparency to responsible underwriting. And on that site, you have signatories, lenders that are signatories, and these are folks that have agreed to follow these guidelines of transparency. And so you can go straight up on that website and look at the different lenders who are signatories and endorsers, and that's a good place to start if you're looking around.
Small business owners, a lot of times they don't have access to information that they should, because when they work, typically they think of serving the community around them or solving a problem that's in their immediate environment.
Sometimes you just say, oh, well, this is what I could get, and I'm just gonna, pay this back or just stay here.
There's a entity at the national federal level called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And even though there's no regulation around MCAs, this entity is collecting sort of cases where bad practice is being done, so that certain entities can get put on this radar of like, we better check them out. So if it's egregious and you want to do something about it, that's short of like suing or legal, you can at least just go to CFPB, and there's a portal there where you can leave your comments, what company it was, and some of the details. Outside of that, I'd go to the borrowersbillofrights.org, go on to that list of signatories. Many of them are CDFIs, and reach out to an organization like TMC Community Capital, right? Because they will help you potentially refinance, right? The idea is to get you into a vehicle that makes sense for your business, and has your interest and your success at the heart of their actions and their communications.